I can never. The one thing I always tell people is I can never remember the first Pantera song I heard, but I could tell you the exact moment that I fell in love with Pantera, and that was when I was playing Guitar Hero, and how Cowboys from Hell was in the game, and I think that I remember just falling in love with that song. But that was just years, years I think after his death, because I didn't play the game for a while. But I do know that I heard their music on the radio all the time, and just like a kid listening to the radio, I would fall in love with anything that was on the radio at the time. Yeah, that I thought was really good. It was one of the things where it was like, oh, I never really considered wanting a Pantera album or anything like that, but because there was really no at that point in my life when I was a kid listening to them, they were then I didn't know who any of the members were or anything like that, and I'm really ashamed to say that I didn't really start knowing who any of the members were until like I was a sophomore in high school, and that was really when Dimebag Darrell started really meaning something to me as a guitar player. But I can tell you that I did really like Pantera in general, though. When I did listen to them and stuff on the radio, and I knew that I knew Walk, I knew Cowboys from Hell already, and I knew that they covered Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath, and that they had just countless songs on the radio. Especially one of my all-time favorites is definitely Cemetery Gates. I mean, just the pre-chorus, the first verse. So I guess you took my youth and gave it all away, like the birth of a newfound joy. This love would end in rage. That as a teenager, that fucking song, that just those words were just like tight knit in my brain, man. You couldn't as a kid and you hear that, you couldn't get rid of that, especially when you're growing up in a family, or you have that kind of relationship with a parent that's not so great. And I don't think me and my mom ever actually started to get along until I was actually out of the house and out of high school and stuff like that, because she was always pushing me and shit like that around, verbally. And she says it was to push me, but I don't know. But just when you hear a song like that, and it's relative to the situation that you're going through in your life, it really hits you. And that's where music really took its huge effect on me, especially lyrically. That's why I try to make my lyrics, especially in my Fatty Talltree stuff, and when I was in Single Shipper, and then now when I'm doing my Mulholland project, I try to make my lyrics as influential as I can. And that really started, especially when I started listening to Pantera. And like I said, I didn't really start actually becoming a fan of Pantera until after Dime had died. But I had been a fan of Pantera just from listening to them on the radio, like liking them. I remember, yeah, I remember the exact moment I heard that Dimebag Darrell died. I was 14, 15 years old, and it had to have been right about the time San Andreas came out for PS2, somewhere along those lines, maybe a little bit before, maybe after, I don't know. I do remember playing, it was some sort of Grand Theft Auto I was playing, sitting there in my beanbag chair, playing a video game, and I was listening to the radio, and I think it was Michael Cross on Eastern Iowa's Rock 108, comes on the radio, and he with a really, really, really low voice. You could just tell he was depressed. It was sad because Michael Cross is one of the most energetic radio personnels you will ever hear. And he comes on the radio, and in a low voice he says, this is right after, like, I think they had interrupted a song actually to announce this. They said, we apologize for the interruption. Um, we just got word that Dimebag Darrell has died in New York. from a gunshot to the head. And I remember he just started like crying. I never heard anything like this in my life, of where a radio personnel just starts crying on the radio. And the only other time I heard is when I heard about when John Lennon died, on the documentaries and stuff. That the really famous one of the DJ crying, and that was the only time I ever heard of anything like that actually happening. But yeah, I never thought that it was going to actually happen in my lifetime, where we heard the radio personnel die, or not die, Jesus Christ, where, radio personnel cries. And it was weird because that didn't happen when the Rev died from A7X. And, I'm just like, that's really weird. But Dimebag Darrell, I'll tell you about how Dimebag Darrell affected my playing. And I tell a lot of people that that it's Chris Hanna from Propaganda, where you hear on my Fatty Talltree songs, the really thrashy sound stuff. And it's not just him. There is a little Dimebag in there. And because I used to, during the time of when I was recording Hardcore Museum in 2009, the first Fatty Talltree full length. I was listening to a lot of heavy metal. I was listening to Slayer and Pantera, but also at the same time I was listening to a lot of 80s hardcore. But at the same time, there was a lot of Slayer and Pantera influence in those songs, and you can especially hear it on certain songs. Especially on that record in general, and especially in on the Ouch EP as well too. Just those early Fatty Talltree records. If you listen to them, there's definitely a lot of heavy metal influence in them, and you can definitely hear it. And there's definitely just the way I play now on the records, for the Fatty Talltree records. There's a lot of thrash. It's more melodic thrash than it is with actual than it actually is like thrash metal. It's more thrash punk. But yeah, just the thing with Dimebag Darrell is that it was just I think Scott Ian said it recently too on his thing. It was just that they could be Dimebag could be so technical with his playing, and at the same time he could be so simple. And it's like what Scott Ian said. He said, like, just listen to Walk. It's one of the most heaviest songs in metal history, but at the same time it's one of the most simplest too. And just stuff, that's the best example. I think for me it was also This Love. You can definitely just hear like the simplicities of the chord, the progressions in that song. Just the did it, just so simple. And Dimebag, I think that what Dimebag was put on this earth to basically say that you could play metal as simple as you can when it comes to the chords and when it comes to progression, but when it comes to everything else, like soloing, keep that shit professional. And it's like they lived. Dimebag Darrell was a huge fan of Kiss, and it's like their name, keep it simple, stupid. I think he legitimately lived by that. And just anybody else who's ever listened to a Pantera record, especially if you pick up Reinventing the Steel. Oh my god, that was one of the fucking albums that really made me love them, especially Death Rattle. That was just one of the most that was another example of just real simple chord progressions and just real simple soloing. It was just that one high pitch, then did it. I mean, just Pantera, but in general, Pantera was not a simple band. You can Phil's vocals, the way his screams, and the way he had the real growl in his voice. He's really heavily influenced by Henry Rollins of Black Flag. He said it on the American Hardcore documentary several times. But just yet they were not a simple band, so to speak. They were definitely on the dot completely 24/7 about how they, how they did their music, and I think they really put a lot of time and effort into it. And even on top of that, it was just one of those things where it's like they put a lot of time and effort into just how the songs were stacked and layered on top of each other. And Dimebag tried to keep things as simple as he could, but at the same time being simplistic and intricate and making his music just as, as simple as complicated as can be. And I think that is a real fucking punk rock ethic. And even though I don't think he really liked punk rock music, there are a lot of punk rockers who really do like Dimebag Darrell and Pantera. And just the fact that the simplistics of their music is a testament to music history, I think, is the most important thing in the whole fucking world, and that's just brilliant.